Welcome to the Encore Audio Archives YouTube channel. I'm Taper Dave, and this is my channel. I've uploaded hundreds of talks here that I've recorded at meetings in West LA, and I've also recorded conventions starting in 2013. I've got a bunch of those up. And Walt and Mary Murray, the original owners of Encore Audio Archives, started the company in the 80s, and Walt recorded Joe and Charlie's and a bunch of stuff down in Vista, California. My sobriety date is June 20th of 1994. I hope you find something you like, so please like and subscribe to my channel and comment down below. If you want to hear something that I don't have or that you don't see, I'll see that I get it. Anyways, take care and have a great day if you want to.
Thanks, Barry. My name's Barbara, and I'm an alcoholic. And I want to start by thanking Nancy, even though she's not here tonight, for inviting me to come here and speak tonight and share my story, my life. It's nice to see so many people that I know, that I've known for a long time. Hi, Casey. And it's good to be here, and it's good to be anywhere, which you'll understand a little better after you hear my story. It's good to be alive tonight. It's good to be standing upright. Believe me, I'm not kidding. I want to get just a few of the statistics out of the way before I begin to tell you what it used to be like, what happened, and what it's like now. And I'll begin by telling you that I drank for 16 years. I used drugs for the last 9 of those years. It was certainly alcohol that brought me to my knees and eventually brought me to Alcoholics Anonymous. And I've been sober since September 25th, 1978, so I'm sober 19 years and a little over 9 months, and I always say nobody's more amazed by that statement than I am, because I could not stop drinking for an hour before I came to Alcoholics Anonymous. By the time I came here, I could not. I was drinking around the clock. And I thought that when you got up to drink at 2 in the morning and 4 in the morning, I didn't understand that that was around the clock drinking. I thought that that meant you had insomnia. I was just loaded with denial. I could not imagine life without drinking. I was born in 1945 on the south side of Chicago into a big drinking family. Dory's from Chicago too. Chicago's the kind of town where you don't have to have IDs to drink, you just need money, or somebody who has it. And I started, my earliest memories are memories of drinking in my family, lots of drinking. I had forgotten about one until recently. I remember driving down the outer drive with my aunt and uncle. I was in the back seat. I think my father was driving the car. And it's Christmas Eve, and we're on our way to one of the relatives' houses, and my aunt's been drinking all day, been drinking martinis all day long. My uncle was making shakers of martinis, and they were drinking them, and my aunt starts throwing up in the back seat. My uncle doesn't skip a beat. He reaches for the Kleenex, mops it up. We keep moving. We're on our way. Nothing's going to stand between us, and just moving right along, That was the kind of drinking. It was just part of life. I remember being maybe about 7 or 8 years old at my grandmother's house, and my uncle came home at about 8 in the morning. Been out all night drinking, passed out on the horn of the car in front of the house without turning the ignition off, and then my grandmother was always appointed to haul him in and get him up the stairs, a long stairwell, and pour him out on the couch so that he could sleep it off and go back to work that night. So drinking was absolutely part of our lives. Sometimes it was the thread of our lives. I'm the only member of my family who is also a member of Alcoholics Anonymous. When I came to AA in 1978 and called my mother up, who was drinking every single day for God knows how many years, and said, "Mom, I'm an alcoholic and I've gone to AA," you can bet that she was not happy. I mean, I'm not kidding. First of all, my mother had a lot of drinking to protect. My mother never stopped drinking and never wanted to stop drinking. My mother used to say, I can stop drinking anytime I want to. I don't want to stop drinking. Why would I want to stop drinking? There's nothing wrong with what I'm doing. That was it. And it went on and on and on and on until she died. As a direct result of, like I said, I don't know how many years of drinking. Years and years, probably 30, 40 years of drinking. That's what my little brother says now. My little brother's 37, and when we went to my mother's funeral in November, he explained that as he was drinking one can of beer after another, that he was going to stop drinking when he wanted to. He didn't want to stop drinking. He liked drinking, and he didn't see why he shouldn't. And I let that go at that, too. I've gone to a lot of Al-Anon meetings in my sobriety, and it's helped me with my family. Because alcoholism, I can think of lots of hilarious and humorous anecdotes from my drinking, but I also know the terrible, horrible side of it. I know about suicides. My uncle had a bad day, so he hung himself. I know about my aunt who was found beaten to death behind alcoholism in a hotel room, and so I know that it ends in a pretty horrible way. It's funny as long as it's funny, and when it's not funny at all anymore. Anyway, I was the oldest of 4 kids. I have 2 younger sisters, and we have a baby brother. And my dad, he was not the drinker. My mother was the drinker. My dad did not drink. My dad had grown up in one of those immigrant neighborhoods that sound very colorful in Martin Scorsese films, but they're not colorful at all. If your dad grew up in one of them, he was a wild man. He'd walk in the house and throw something across the room if he felt like it. He screamed all the time. He was just a lunatic. He considered himself a strict disciplinarian, which was putting it mildly. Wow. He didn't allow any of us to drink, any of the kids to drink. So I didn't drink at home. But I drank alcoholically from the very beginning, and this is how it goes. When I was 17 years old, I graduated from high school. And my mother sent me to northern Wisconsin to go to college. And I happened to go to Wisconsin State College at Eau Claire. And I was there a couple of weeks, and somebody said to me, would I like to go to a beer bar called The Hoot? It was everything it sounds like. I'd never been in a beer bar in my life. I didn't know anything about it, but I couldn't wait to go. There was dancing, there was a live band. I walked in, it had the bar that runs like forever, like 3 miles with a mirror behind it. Everybody's standing or sitting in front of the mirror looking at themselves. It's the typical bar, typical bar. There was a big dance floor with sawdust on the floor and a live band, and it was just wonderful, it was just absolutely wonderful. And then somebody said to me that 3-2 beer was just like soda pop, so I drank 8 bottles in 45 minutes. Right from the beginning. I mean, didn't even skip a beat. I've heard it said, and I think that I agree with this, that I was a social drinker for 20 minutes. I just skipped the whole thing and got right down to it. I threw up, had to go to the bathroom, had to throw up. I stood up, I fell down. I went on a crying jag. I did everything a drunk does, everything you've ever heard. I had to be taken home, and I went to bed, and I woke up with a hangover, and I just could not wait to get back to that bar again, because I wasn't able to verbalize this until many years later in Alcoholics Anonymous. But what happened is, when I drank, I no longer felt different from, separate from. I felt like I was one of you. I could talk to anybody I wanted to, and did, whether they wanted to listen or not. I felt that I could dance. I could just do and say I just became everything I had wanted to be. And I couldn't wait to get back there. At the end of the second semester, I had 5 Fs. I had given up going to class. Somehow along the line, all of that just went by the wayside. And I concentrated on what I really liked to do, which was drinking and partying and all of it. I had absolutely no interest in school. It was absolutely secondary. The dormitory that I lived in was a place to sleep. And when I wanted to, I'm so old that we had house mothers. Remember, though, that's like from the dark ages, I know. But we had house mothers, and we had to be in bed by 10. And I would get into bed and turn the lights out, and when I was sure everybody was asleep, I would go out the window. I did that kind of stuff. They were writing letters to my mother, who was just in a state. She couldn't understand how this would all happen. And then my father came up, and he picked me up, and he said we were going home, and I was never going to go to school out of town again. That was their answer to it, never. So back we went to Chicago. I wasn't drinking. Instead of 5 Fs, I was getting A's and B's. I never made those connections. I never made any connection between drinking and failing. I never made that connection. I never made a connection between not drinking and having a better life. Not until I came to AA. Anyway, I came back to Chicago, and I went to school in Evanston, Illinois, and I met this fellow. I was 19 years old, and I remember him saying to me very clearly, I'd known him about 3 days, and he said, I think that what we ought to do is go to a party every single day. It just sounded terrific. You know, I just thought it was great. What an opportunity, what an invitation. And a year and a half later, I married him, and that was basically all we had in common, was that we drank alike. It was with this man, my ex-husband and the father of my children, that I began drinking in the morning. I remember, if you drink at 8 a.m., that's called drinking in the morning. Those things were so hard for me to admit, before I came to AA, I just couldn't admit that stuff. But I remember drinking, getting a 6-pack of beer with him for breakfast and sitting and drinking it in the morning. And that's what we had in common, lots and lots and lots of drinking. We went to New Orleans for our honeymoon, which is a great place to go if you like to drink, and went down there, and we were plastered all the time. And the third day we were married, we had an argument about whether we would go to Antoine's on Wednesday night or on Thursday night. And, I just knew that I was not going to have the kind of family. I had grown up around a lot of violence and a lot of drinking, and guess what? I was married to him 3 days, and he slapped my face for disagreeing with him. And that's the way my life went for 10 years. And I didn't think anything about it. Over the 10 years, it became impossible for me to think of ever leaving, ever doing anything about my life, because I had to drink. As I've learned in Alcoholics Anonymous, I suffer from a progressive disease, and a disease that owns me. I mean, if you have to have a drink every day, like I did, you've given up all of your choices, all of your rights. I had no more, and I was drinking daily from the beginning. I want to welcome our visitor, Maria. Is that your name, from Germany? Did a lot of drinking in Germany, too. Sure did. I went there in 1968 with my ex-husband to Karlsruhe. I lived there for 2 years. Germany has a distinction. You can buy liters of beer right out of like dispensers on the street. Well, we'd be down there 2 in the morning, 4 in the morning. I remember those. I remember strawberry wine. I loved the strawberry wine. That was terrific. I would have, I thought I was so continental. I would have French yogurt, German biscuits, and strawberry wine for breakfast. So I thought that was really slick. I don't know how I never ended up arrested. I couldn't account for that, because it's certainly for no good reason. But we were there for 2 years. We came back in 1970, and I had my first child, my daughter, Allison, who's 28 years old. I had her in May 1970. And then I had the second one, my little boy, my son, well, he's 6'7" now, he's my son. I had him in August 1971. And I just knew that when we had those kids, our lives were going to settle down and we were going to get down to the business of living, and all of our problems were going to be over. My ex-husband had developed, he was in the service, he was in the Army, which is how we ended up in Germany. And he developed a little sideline. He was a drug dealer, which I can tell you opened a side of life that I never even imagined. And I mean, it was just wild, and like I said, I had no rights anymore. I'm still in this stage, where I've got a drink. I'm having Erdbeer wine, strawberry wine, and French yogurt for breakfast, and my ex-husband has a scale in the living room, and he's measuring the dope, And I'm just sitting there in a dream world, I guess. That's all I can say. I mean, I have lived in so much denial. It's appalling that I'm alive. So anyway, when we came back to the States, my ex-husband assured me that that entire life was over with. We had left that behind us. He would never get involved in anything like that again. That me and the two kids meant so much to him. Now, my side of this lie is to try to believe it, But anyway, it was December 1972, and a big Irish cop shows up at my door in Chicago, like Officer Flanagan or Officer O'Malley or one of those guys, and bump, 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 and I say, yes, and he's looking for my ex-husband, and I said, why? And he just happened to have a warrant for his arrest for receiving stolen property. Oh my God, I can't believe that. Who? And the next thing I knew, it's February 1973. 2 months later, I am moving to California. It took me years into my sobriety to figure that out. I thought it was all a coincidence, He came home and he said to me, we've got this great offer, we're going to move to LA. It's beautiful, there are palm trees, and of course, most importantly, no Chicago police. And off we went. We moved out here, and we moved out into the valley, and I had two little kids, 1.5 and 2.5, and I'm drinking at about 8 o'clock in the morning, and I'm getting loaded and doing things like pouring the cereal into the middle of the kitchen table and going back to bed. Ugly picture. And then I'd say things to people like, if I was questioned, I'd say, if you lived in Van Nuys, you'd drink at 8 o'clock in the morning too, and make those kind of cracks. But my drinking, I already knew my drinking was out of hand, and so I went out and I got a job. I figured if I get a job and get myself under control, that's all I need to do. A little willpower. I get a job. We move over, and then I say, no, we got to move. That's part of the problem. I can't stay in the valley. If we move to Playa Del Rey, I won't drink anymore. So we move over to Playa Del Rey. Yeah, right. You're not kidding either. And somehow the cops could always find our house, no matter where we lived. It didn't matter where we lived. If we lived in Van Nuys, they came to our house. If we lived in Playa Del Rey, they came to our house. No matter where we lived, the fight was always right there. We were screaming and raving and ranting and drinking and drunk and crazy, and the cops always found us. So let's see, we lived on Manitoba, then we needed to move to Redlands, so then we moved to Redlands. So then we needed to move to, we were on the move. Then we needed to move down to Brentwood, moved down to Brentwood. 1977, I filed for divorce against my ex-husband, and I got a 2-year restraining order. You had to have 5 witnesses, no problem. They all marched up and raised their hand and signed affidavits, and my attorney went off and got the restraining order, and now I knew that I would never have to drink again as long as I lived, because I got rid of that goddamn son of a bitch who had made me drink all these years. Right. I mean, dense, really dense. So now I'm drinking even more. Now I'm scared to death. I've got these 2 little kids, and I've gotten rid of him. But what I didn't figure was I got rid of the money at the same time, you know. And now I'm really, really scared. And so I'm walking down the street in June 1977. 2 kids, barefoot, dressed in a pair of jeans, a t-shirt, and I've got a bourbon bottle in my hand. And I walked up to a group of people that I'd never seen before, a man and 2 women and some dogs. And I introduced myself to them. I told them my name was Barbara. I lived down on Granville. And I had these 2 kids. And my ex-husband was a cocaine addict. And I didn't know what was going to happen to me. I was being evicted. I couldn't work, and I had no idea what was going to become of me. So one of these girls introduced herself to me. She said her name was Kathy. She said, you know, I'm the manager of this building. And she said, I'm going to make a little deal with you. You can live in my living room for 30 days, provided that you do 2 things. Number 1, you can't drink. And I would immediately, somebody'd say drinking, I'd think, how did they know? I'm trapped. Provided, number 1, you don't drink. Number 2, you have to go with me somewhere on Thursday night. So imagine my surprise to find myself the following Thursday night at 7 o'clock in the evening at the Brentwood Presbyterian Church at the beginner's workshop of Alcoholics Anonymous. Now, anybody with any sense, which all of you look like you have a lot more sense than I had, certainly, any of you would know that this is a major miracle. I took it as a personal attack on my character. I mean, maybe I drank, but really, do you have to go to these extremes and take me to AA, for Christ's sake? That's for people who have problems. I didn't have any problems. It's for people in trench coats, people on Skid Row. So I didn't go. I think I had to go to 2 or 3 meetings, or Kathy wouldn't let me live in the living room. So I didn't want to go back. Got an apartment, another apartment on Granville, and I moved my 2 kids in. But you know, there's a saying in AA that says, we will ruin your drinking, and that's what had happened. I'd get in that apartment, and I'd wake up or come to, however you'd like to view it, in the morning, and I would think, you know, I'm not going to drink today. I have enough willpower. I don't have to drink today. There's absolutely no reason for me to drink today. I have no desire to, and I'd be drunk by 10 in the morning. I'd be drunk by 11 in the morning. I'd be out of the apartment and go to a liquor store and write a bad check if I needed to, or whatever. Whatever. That's just the way it was, and I'd be passed out by 2:30 on the floor of my living room, and another day was shot, finished. It never occurred to me to go back to AA. I didn't want to go back to AA because I did not want to stop drinking. I could not imagine my life without drinking. So, now when I went to those 3 meetings at the Brentwood Presbyterian Church, I remembered seeing a man at those meetings, a very distinctive looking man. Not handsome, not anything, but very, very distinctive, a man that you would recognize across the room. So anyway, we're back on Granville in the 1-room apartment with me and the kids, and I get evicted for a very good reason. I stopped paying the rent. I get evicted, and now I've got 2 choices. I can go back to AA. I mean, surely at these meetings I had seen people and met people, several people, who told me that they did not have to drink anymore. So I have that choice to return to AA, or I can go live with my ex-husband, against whom I have a restraining order. You know the one I picked. I went to live with my ex-husband. Went up to the door, ba, 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 I'm here, I have no job, I have no place to live, and do something. He said to me, you can live in the living room if you behave yourself. All right, so I move in. Now we've gone from Granville, now we're at 602 Pier in Santa Monica. Guess who lives in the front apartment? The man from the meeting. And I'm beginning to get the picture that something very big is taking place in my life, you know? If you think I told that man that I had seen him at an AA meeting, you're out of your mind. I wouldn't tell anybody that. Instead, what happened is that it was in August 1978. I came across the front lawn. I had been down to the mini-mart to buy a 6-pack of Coors for breakfast, and this man's girlfriend called me into their apartment, and she began to talk to me. Both of our daughters were in 2nd grade together. I don't remember much of what she said. I had woken up or come to in the usual condition with the shakes and the sweats and hardly able to get one foot in front of the other. And I was sitting in her kitchen popping one beer after another. But I do remember one thing she said to me very distinctly. She said to me, "Barbara, I don't have to drink anymore. I'm a sober member of Alcoholics Anonymous, and I have not had a drink in 2 years," which seemed absolutely inconceivable to me, that anybody, drunk, alcoholic, or non-alcoholic, could go 2 years without a drink. It just seemed absolutely unbelievable. She asked me if I wanted to go to a meeting on Wednesday. I was getting the picture, you know, that somewhere in my life, a very big thing was going on, that there was a power much greater than myself that was operating in my life. So on Wednesday night, we went to the big Wednesday night Pacific Group meeting. Probably a lot of you have been there. I was one who went to her first meeting of the Pacific Group drunk. I came home that night or that afternoon or whatever and got shit-faced before I left. And we went over there, and it's two short speakers and one main speaker. And I remember one of the short speakers. She was a young woman. She had about 2 years. I don't know who she was. I don't know her name or anything. But I remember her talking about coming from a family, growing up in a family where there were suicides. She mentioned a murder. She cried from the time she began speaking until it was over with. She talked about the fact that she was in AA, she was sober, her life had changed. And what I can tell you is that I believed her. I believed that she was telling the truth, and I think more importantly, I believed that it was possible for me to try. So I began going to meetings with Clara, who became my temporary sponsor. Clara recently, it's so funny, she recently said to me, "Barbara, you know, you were so angry when you finally got sober that I thought to myself, maybe we should have let her go on drinking." She was so crazy, just so completely nuts. So anyway, Clara and I, we're going to meetings all the time, and we're even 12-stepping people, and by then I got a little temporary job. I got a job working for Lorimar Productions, and they invited me to a party. I had 48 days. They invited me to a party. So I went to Claire and I said, "You know, I've been invited to a party at work." And she said, "Barbara, do you think there's going to be any drinking and using there?" I said, "Yes." And she said, "Barbara, there's a saying around the program that if you don't want to slip, don't go to slippery places." I thought that was good advice for people that didn't have the self-control that I had. So I went, and of course I got loaded. You know, I got loaded. That was September 24th, 1978. I went out on Pacific Coast Highway that night, and I blacked out and came out and blacked out and came back and forth and back and forth. And at 8 o'clock the next morning, I went to Clara's house, and I said, "I got loaded last night." And she said, "Well," she said, "you just have to start over." And I was beginning to get the picture. You know, the picture around here was that I don't take a drink, I don't smoke a joint, I don't pop a pill, I don't do anything. I take nothing that affects me from the neck up, one day at a time, and that my sobriety had to come before anything else. And something else had happened to me that night. I was so scared. I was so scared on PCH. I cannot tell you. I was terror-stricken. I didn't know if I was going to be able to get home. And I had been sober long enough to be aware of what was going on. And I surrendered. I just plain and simple surrendered. I had taken, by the way, I had taken the 20 questions test at the Pacific group meeting. Now, to be a little more to the point, I didn't take it. I was drunk. Somebody took it for me and handed it to me as my invitation to AA and explained to me that I was definitely in the right place, you know. And I took that to work the next day back at Lorimar, and I showed it to everybody. Oh, boy is right. I mean, I was absolutely the prototype, the picture of the completely brainless newcomer. I mean, I just had no brains left. About everything. You know, nobody wanted to hear it. People would fly in the opposite direction. Anyway, I took my 20 questions test to work and showed it to everybody. And it turned out that the man next door who had a dressing room next door was a man that a lot of us have known. He was a member of our program. His name was Patrick O. He passed away a few years ago. And at that time, he had 7 years of sobriety. And I remember what he said. It was so funny. He looked at my 20 questions test, and he read it aloud to me. And he said, well, it appears to me that the only place that you did not drink was underwater. So pathetic. So pathetic. So, but what he did, you know what he did? He went to the man that I worked for, my boss, and this is 1978, before there was so much awareness about alcoholism and before there were all the rehabs and the programs that there are now. And he talked to my boss and said, you know, she's really sick. She looks sick to me. And if you'll let me help her, I'll help her. If you'll let her stay here. Because there was no way. I would go to sleep. I'd be sitting in a chair, and I'd do this. I just was totally out of it. Another thing that happened, it was so interesting to me. There was the liquor, the cocaine, and the marijuana were free and unlimited at that time. And I remember somebody telling me, a man named Richard saying to me, now, Barbara, if you're at work and you feel like getting loaded, you get up and leave. You can say goodbye if you want to. It doesn't matter. You get up and you leave. And I was sure that I would be fired. And he said, now I want to explain something to you. He said, if you do God's work, God will do your work. Now, you know that threw me for a complete loop. I didn't know what the hell he was talking about. He said, this is what I mean. God wants you to be sober. There's no way that you would be in AA if God did not want you to be sober. You're too sick to come here by yourself. God wants you to be sober. You do everything that you have to do to stay sober. If you have to leave work, you leave work. You go to meetings, you do everything that we do around here to stay sober. And God will do your work. And that is that God will make sure that you have a roof over your head, that your needs are met, that you always have plenty to eat. He'll take care of your kids. You don't have to worry about that. I left that job 7 times. Under those conditions, I was never fired. I do remember this man that I worked for saying to me one Friday, Barbara, it's Friday. We've had a long week. Go home, have a good weekend. If you feel like drinking, as they say in AA, call me and I'll join you. I mean, I was so nuts. I was just at large in the world. I got a sponsor, and I began to work the steps. I began to write my inventory when I was 4 or 5 months sober, and it was done by the time I was I think about 7 or 8 months sober, something like that. My sponsor helped me to write I did the 6 and 7 steps, and I had no idea what they meant, believe me. And then my sponsor helped me to write the 8th step, the list, and I began to make my amends. I made amends to my ex-husband in spite of the restraining order. My sponsor told me I had to do it. I made an appointment. I went over there to see him. I spent about 45 minutes talking to him, making amends to him. Clara asked my ex-husband if he wanted to go to AA. He never spoke to her again. And My ex-husband, I'm now sober 19 years, almost 20 years, and my ex-husband is now drinking 35 years. And I'm very glad that I didn't wait for him to come to AA, because I would be dead and he would still be drinking. I have had to have a very unconditional sobriety. This seemed unbelievable to me, that I would somehow or another end up in this kind of life, because I had moved from my father's house to my husband's house. I just couldn't imagine not somehow or another cleaning things up with my children's father, but it did not work out that way. I'm also glad that I made amends to him, because my ex-husband disappeared when I was 3 years sober. One day he disappeared. Now, my ex-husband, when he was 18 years old, got over 100 football scholarship offers from all over the country. When he was 27, that was around the time we moved to California, he was working for an investment banking firm. And when he was 37, we found him, the kids and I found him, he was on Skid Row. It's just shocking what has happened to his life. And he has absolutely, it's like my mother, like my brother, he has absolutely no interest in stopping drinking. He'll stop drinking when he wants to. I brought my kids to AA with me, of course. They were 7 and 8, and they're 27 and 28 this year. And we lived down in Santa Monica. We lived on 3rd Street. Both my kids graduated from Santa Monica High School. My daughter was always a good student, and I can remember she wanted to go to college so bad, and she wanted to go to college outside of town and all that. We certainly had no money to do that. And when she was, I guess, about a sophomore or junior, I started asking God to direct me in any way that I could to help her. She wanted to go to college. I wanted somehow to make amends to this girl for the things that I had done and not done when she was little. Would he help me and show me how to do that? And my daughter was named a Regent Scholar by the state of California and given a full scholarship to UC Santa Barbara. She graduated from there with a degree in aquatic biology, and she works up in Silicon Valley now for one of the big technology firms. My son Tommy lives in Kansas now. My son Tommy has a quality, it's hard. It's understandable and hard to see. He's always wanted to have a relationship with his dad. And when my son was about, I'm remarried, my second husband, who I'm married to now about 7.5 years, my son came to us and said, I'm going to go live with Dad. And it's hard to remember you're powerless when you think that somebody's jumping into the fire. So we begged him not to, but he went and he lived with his dad. And my ex-husband was putting away a fifth to a quart of vodka a day. And scary, scary things happened. Like my son called me one day and said, Mom, I came home the other night about 1 or 2 in the morning, and Dad was so drunk he didn't recognize me and he pulled a gun on me. Real scary stuff happened, I immediately, I had an answer. I said, is that gun registered? I was going to have the police over there. He had all the bases covered. But, I began to pray and ask God, please, to protect my son and to protect him from himself and to protect him from stand between him and all harm. That's one of my favorite prayers. And guess who was the instrument in that situation? Was the LA County Sheriff. They came around looking for him again. He was up to no good again. He's been stealing money from somebody else again. And when he found out they were trying to serve him with a warrant for his arrest, he got up and moved to Alabama. So we all got rid of him. The unfortunate part about it is that Tommy had to wind up, well, it's not unfortunate, it didn't go my way. Tommy enlisted in the Army and he went to Kansas because he was left with a lot of bills. So I have really seen how horrifying alcoholism can be, in its practice. I've seen it just go through people's lives like a fire. And then by contrast, I have seen the extraordinary miracles that can take place in Alcoholics Anonymous, for which I'm very grateful. Let me tell you about my husband, man I'm married to now. When I was about 11 and a half years sober, I met this man in the Marina Center, and he asked me for my phone number. And he called me, and he said that he had really enjoyed meeting me, and he would like to get to know me better, and he would like to take me out to lunch. So I explained to him how I'd been born into an alcoholic family, and that all the men in my family had been violent, and you know, and from there I'd been involved in a very violent alcoholic marriage for 10 years, and it ended with a restraining order. And I had tried dating in my 40s, and nothing ever worked out. I just did not have a good history with men. And he said to me, now that's what I said, and this is what he said. He said, I just want to go to lunch. I like that. So anyway, we went to lunch, and we got married a year later. And he can't be here tonight. He works nights. He works in computers, and he works on from midnight until 9 in the morning. But when we were married, about a year and a half, something like that, we took my 2 kids down to Puerto Vallarta for a family vacation, which I should tell you, it was amazing. Our hotel was a 15-minute walk from the Puerto Vallarta Alano Club, where there are English-speaking meetings twice a day. Anyway, we took my 2 kids down there, and I remember thinking to myself, how do you go from walking down Gorham with a bottle of bourbon in your hand and 2 little kids, barefoot, sweating, drunk, to a family vacation that's all paid for on the beach in Mexico? It just it's an example of the extraordinary miracles that have taken place in my life as a result of being a member of Alcoholics Anonymous, coming here one day at a time, not taking a drink, doing what's asked of us to do, being of service. And I think my time is up, and I want to thank all of you for being here. And I wish Nancy was here so I could thank her in person, but thank Nancy for inviting me here to speak. And I want to thank God, of course, for my sobriety. Thank you.
Sorry to interrupt your viewing. Taper Dave here. Just wanted to take a second to ask you to like and subscribe to my channel. Let me know if you like what you're listening. I've got some very good talks here, and this one's a great one. Just curious, do you think this is better than Zoom? Tell me what you think. Okay, this is how I prepare my drone for launching. I like to do it inside the cab of my truck so I'm not standing outside in the weather. To install the joysticks for control, up and down, right and left, powered on. I have an Android phone that I use to connect it to the drone with. And it's actually controlled through the iPhone, through an app. Oops, wrong way. It's actually controlled through the iPhone, or through this Android phone, through the app. It's actually controlled through the Android phone, through an app, and you connect it through this short connection right here.
Remote control connected.
Remote control's connected. So I pull out the drone. I have to extend the legs. Long legs extended first, then the short legs. Remove the gimbal protector. Set that aside, then power it on one short burst, then one long burst. I lay it down. So I have to go to calibrate. So the drone's not connected yet. It shows you here as this drone gets disconnected, even though the remote's powered on. So the drone has to establish it's connected. So I go into the app to calibration mode. First I'll calibrate the remote controller. Start calibration. Out, in, oop, out, in, up, down, and then this little wheel is to control the gimbal. So it's calibrated. Go to gimbal calibration, start calibration, and then it calibrates the gimbal. I don't know if that shows up. The gimbal's moving all over the place. Changes, you can see it on the video. And I'm calibrated to take off. It's acquired 7 satellites at the moment. There are 26 satellites up in the sky, which it has to acquire before you can take off. So it's connected. It's got enough satellites. This is white. I can go to press this little arrow button, swipe right to take off, and it would start the motors if I slid this to the right. But I'll wait till I get outside. Don't want to do it inside.